Welcome to Young Minds and Big Questions YouTube channel. My name is Jared.
I'm Anthony. How you guys doing?
We're so glad you're back with us. This is a channel devoted to challenging you guys to ask and wrestle through the big questions of life. And today we've got a big one.
We do, yes.
We're going to be talking about objective morality. Does it exist? And actually, we are going to play a clip between Justin Brierley, who's the host of the very world-famous podcast called
One of the best
Unbelievable.
podcasts in the world.
Yes, I would say. It's probably the premier apologetics
podcast in the world.
Podcast.
I mean, what's better than that?
Besides ours, but yeah. And so Justin Brierley's having a conversation with the also world-famous Richard Dawkins.
Yes.
And the audio, forgive us, it's a little bit weak, but they're kind of like in a pub post-debate, and he's interviewing them. And one of the things that comes up is Justin asks Richard about objective morality. And under his worldview of being a purely naturalist, how does this make sense?
What's up?
Where do you ground it?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to play it for you guys, and then we're going to respond to it, and hopefully this will be helpful. Check it out.
What about ultimate, if you like, morality? Because I know that there wasn't as much time as I imagined there was going to be in the debate for that aspect. And many who are Christians and apologists, etc., would say, ultimately, if there is no morality, as it were, given by God, then there is no compulsion on anyone to stop them going around doing whatever they like, because there's no ultimate moral.
Do you realise what abject contempt you're holding your fellow humans in when you say that? You're actually implying that the only reason we don't go around raping and pillaging and stealing is that we're frightened of God. I mean, what kind of a contemptible reason for being good is that?
That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, everyone feels that there is some kind of objective moral facts around that raping and killing and stealing is wrong. Now, that is true regardless of whether evolution has given us those, if you like, criteria to live by. It's true regardless of whether we have evolved in the way we evolved. It's as true as 1 + 1 = 2.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not as true as 1 + 1 = 2. What we're saying, and I think we're probably agreeing, is that there are certain universal moral principles which everybody has, regardless of their religion and whether they have a religion at all. Things like, actually, there's even been research on this, giving people rather standard moral questions, moral dilemmas, hypothetical ones, and asking which they think is the more moral course. And there's a wide measure of agreement among all humans and different tribes and everything. I see no problem with deriving that from our evolutionary origins. We all have noses, we all have eyes, we all have knees, and these have all evolved. We all have sexual desires because they've evolved. Why shouldn't we have this sense of what's moral? Things like the golden rule, things like do as you would be done by.
But if we had evolved into a society where rape was considered fine, would that mean that rape is fine?
I don't want to answer that question. It's enough for me to say that we live in a society where it's not considered fine. We live in a society where selfishness, where failure to pay your debts, failure to reciprocate favours is regarded askance. That is the society in which we live. I'm very glad. That's a value judgment. I'm very glad that I live in such a society.
But when you make a value judgment, don't you immediately step yourself outside of this evolutionary process and say there is the reason this is good is because it's good, and you don't have any way to stand on that statement.
But my value judgment itself could come from my evolutionary past, and I suppose.
So therefore, it's just as random in a sense as any product of evolution.
Well, you could say that. But it doesn't, in any case, nothing about it makes it more probable that there is anything supernatural.
Okay, but ultimately, your belief that rape is wrong is as arbitrary as the fact that we've evolved 5 fingers rather than 6. I mean,
you could say that, yeah.
All right. So, wow. Seems like Justin got the better of
I think that was one of
Richard.
my favorite dialogues when you're talking about morality. I mean, just because Richard was so honest in his view, because it was so, you know what I mean? just blatantly honest. He didn't try and code it. He didn't try and disguise it.
Yeah. Well, and Justin did a good job of, I don't think he was trying to trap him. I think he kept pushing out the logical conclusion of his view, right? And so I want to start off by commenting on in the very beginning, in case you missed it. Richard Dawkins kind of explodes a little bit on him and says like, "Oh, this is classic, classic religion. You're just assuming
atheists can't be moral."
Right. The only reason why we don't go around raping and pillaging is because we're afraid of God. And if you're an atheist, we're glad you're watching, glad you're listening. That is not the argument. No. The argument of objective morality has nothing to do, really, with can an atheist be a moral person.
Right.
We're talking about the grounding of your worldview and the grounding of morality in your worldview. Yeah. So if you believe in objective morality, meaning there's a standard of morals, no matter what time, place, no matter how you came to believe those, any of that stuff, no matter what your opinion they're true, independent of your opinion. Yeah. We're saying if you believe in objective morality, which most of humanity does, how do you ground that?
Yeah.
And the argument
Where
is,
does it come from?
Unless there's a God, if there is no God, then we cannot have objective morality. Yeah. And so I think it's important to know as we move on and you hear this, no one is saying that if you don't believe in God, you can't be a good person.
Of course you can be a good person.
Sure. The question is, if you believe it is wrong to kill or is wrong to rape or is wrong to torture babies for fun, where do you ground that belief if there is no God?
Right, if there is no God. So I think the most revealing spot was when Richard says, listen, when Justin Brierley asked Richard the question, he asked him, if we evolved to believe that rape was okay, right? That was his argument. If we evolved to believe that was okay, then would it be okay?
Right.
And then Richard Dawkins was just like, I don't feel comfortable answering that. Because he knows
he literally said, I don't want to answer that.
Leads. He knows that everything that he believes is contingent upon his evolutionary history, including his moral norms.
Right.
So if we evolve differently, we might have a completely different set of moral norms. So then morality is just subjective. It's not based upon anything other than our own opinions.
Right.
And our own cultural background, our evolutionary history. That's it. If we evolve differently, if we grew up differently, we might have a different set of moral norms.
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of people, when pressed down that road, and Richard Dawkins was very revealing when he said, I don't want to answer that question because he knows it's wrong. Because he knows it's not right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just thought that was, oh man, good kudos to you, Justin.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think even furthermore, I don't think Richard Dawkins was fair. He kind of made it seem like, all of humanity kind of agrees. Like, we all know murder is wrong.
Right.
Really? I don't think that's true. Look at cultures that exist now.
Yeah.
They absolutely don't value human life in the same way. So under his view of naturalism, you could say we evolved to have those morals. Well, then Adolf Hitler evolved to have the morality he did. And you can't say what he did was wrong, right? We can't say what anybody does is objectively wrong.
That's what Bertrand Russell said. I can't say what happened in Auschwitz is wrong.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. But it's not. It can't be objectively wrong because there are no objective moral standards. Like what Richard Dawkins said, it's not as true as 1 + 1 = 2. It's just not. It is relative.
Right.
And when you're left with relative morality, then you're doing as G.K. Chesterton said, placing your feet firmly in midair.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go.
And the reality of that kind of a worldview is then that means that there really is no grounding for human value. There's no grounding for any sort of justice. Yeah. There's no grounding for any of those things other than you feel them or you think them, but they're not objectively wrong. So here's our hope, man. If you guys believe in objective morality, if you believe there are certain things that are right and wrong, no matter your opinion, does your worldview make sense of that belief?
It's just something to think about.
Do you have a grounding?
Yeah, do you have a grounding? And on Christian theism, there's good reasons to believe in not only in objective moral standards, but that inclination that we know that there are certain things that are right and wrong. Richard Dawkins so desperately wanted to affirm that this was wrong, but he couldn't because his worldview didn't allow him to.
Yeah.
So we have to take an assessment of our worldview, and we have to say what makes the most sense out of what we see.
Right. Hey guys, this has been Young Minds with Big Questions, talking objective morality. Hope you enjoyed. If you want to follow us on Twitter, YMBQ Podcast. You can also hit us up on Facebook, Young Minds Big Questions, or email us your questions or your thoughts at youngmindsbigquestions@gmail.com. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.